probably get this at least once a month in some form or fashion, but it's always how much money does someone need at retirement? And it's always kind of funny when it does come up at a social gathering or a social party. But the fact of the matter is, there's also been an awful lot of press about this lately. In fact, the BlackRock financial CEO, a guy named Larry Fink, described it recently in his letter to his shareholders that he calls this an impossible math problem. And he believes that there's a looming retirement crisis, in large part because of this. And what does he mean by an impossible math problem? Well, there's some knowns, but the biggest question is none of us know our date of when we're going to pass away, when we're going to die. And also, we don't know what our health is going to be prior to that. But let's talk about some general rules of thumb out there that we can use to start to estimate this. And this goes back to my certified financial planner days when I kept my designation active. But the general rule of thumb was having 10 times the amount of assets as to your spending. So if in your last years of actively working, you're making $70,000, then the general rule of thumb is you need about $70,000 of investable assets to maintain that. Or if you were spending $150,000, you're going to need about $1.5 million in assets. There's also an interesting survey that came out. Northwestern Mutual, the insurance company, they did a pretty in-depth survey, obviously, with 4,500 plus people. And they just came back with the average estimate for a successful retirement was at 1.46 million or $1,460,000 of investable assets in order to retire comfortably. That's actually up from the prior year of about 1.2 million. So it's jumped by $200,000 in 1 year. And I would probably say that that significant increase came because of the inflation that we're seeing in the markets. You've got this survey. Let me just make one comment out of both those two things. I believe that people tend to overestimate the amounts of money that they will need. They tend to underinvest. Obviously, we've got a problem with a large percentage of the population that has minimal to no invested assets for their retirement. But when it starts to coming into planning, I think that a lot of times people overestimate how much they're going to need. Let's talk about what my take on this is. I started this a little bit, and obviously I was alluding to this. There is no magic number. Magic doesn't exist, right? It's all an illusion, okay? But in finances, when you get to the retirement part, there is no simple mathematical number that you can go and you can say, all right, I'm going to need $1,460,000.32. That doesn't exist. But you're going to come into, instead of something fictional like magic, you're going to come into reality. And what I mean by that is when you retire, you're going to have so much in assets. And assets, I'm defining this as your 401k balance, any individual retirement accounts that you might have, SEP plans, any investment accounts, business ownership, the value of any real estate that you hold, whether that is your house or any other types of rental property or anything else along those lines. You're going to have so much in liabilities. Maybe you have this house, but you have a mortgage attached to that house. Maybe you have a car or two, and you've got car payments that are due. And then you're also going to have the monthly expenses of food, your utilities, and as we go in deeper and deeper into retirement, you're going to have your medical expenses. So you have to kind of calculate all that, and then you have to balance that with your cash flow. People are obviously going to have Social Security coming in. A lot of teachers have TRS, the pension. We have pension assets. We have different things that are coming in, and you have to juggle this. You have to balance it. I would say one word of warning. What we see a lot when people start to go into retirement is the fact that you hit retirement. It's like, man, I've been working all this time. I want to go have some fun. I want to do some things. And I see a tendency to overspend at the beginning of the retirement. And depending upon how much that overspending is, can raise a real red flag. Or sometimes it's like, okay, I understand you're having a little bit of fun, but you need to be cautious of it, is my point. I go back to, as in all things in life, we have to deal with the reality and we have to act accordingly. I have a client of mine whose husband, the husband just retired actually on the 3rd of this month, sat down and had a conversation, and they're actually both working part-time right now. And one of the first things that particularly the wife mentioned was really going to have to pay attention to the spending. And I was like, this is a person that's going to have, in all probability, a successful retirement because the spending aspect of it is the most important thing. How fast you spend down those assets depends on the amount of money that you're spending out there. In taking a reasonable approach, I've often said that the first part of retirement, there's a lot of times where now you can go and you have the time to do things, explore, travel, have a great time. And it's a great time to spend that. And I highly encourage it. Just obviously keeping an eye on making sure that we have this very impossible math number that if you do live to be 106, if you have a 20, 25, 30-year retirement, you have to plan for that. And you have to remember there's the inflationary numbers, and Will went through the whole thing with Japan, and what I hope is that we follow up with the offset of what inflation, the damage that can do. We're here to help you with this. We're not saying that we have a solve for an impossible math question, but what we do have is the experience of working with folks to understand their finances, their quality of life, and trying to help them make the decisions with the most information.